Hi everyone, Phil here. Welcome to Type 2 Cycling. Today I thought I'd just go through a few of the things that I've learned in the last few years since I started doing endurance cycling, audaxing, randonneuring, whatever you want to call it. Maybe you'll learn from my mistakes, especially if you're newer to going out for long bike rides. Okay, let's get into it then. Okay, so number one, and the golden rule of endurance cycling, is no faffing. Be time efficient. Things like, faffing with your bags, getting food in and out, changing layers, going to the toilet, checking your phone when you stop at a shop. All of these little things, it might only be 30 seconds, a minute at a time, but when you're out all day, it can make a 6-hour ride an 8-hour ride. And I think the more tired you get, the more susceptible you are to this. So yeah, keep faffing to a minimum. I would say on a related note as well, obviously, it's important, it's sensible to stop for lunch or to have some decent breaks throughout the day, but don't have them too long. I find after a certain point, you just start to get stiff, and then it makes it that much more difficult to get into a rhythm when you set off again. I think at this time of year when it's colder, it's especially the case, because there's nothing worse than sitting in like a nice warm pub for an hour, get nice and cozy, then you head out into the cold and it's just so much worse. So yeah, be sensible, take breaks, but don't take too long. Tip number 2, and again this applies less so to organised events, but definitely when you're going out planning your own routes, is just plan. Again, this can save potentially hours of your route just by making sure you're following roads that are suitable. So anyone that saw my last video, I recently ended up taking a detour through some farmers' fields, which meant horrible riding on mud, jumping a couple of gates, and it probably added about 20 minutes to our route, and it was just unpleasant. Covered in shit on my shoes, had to clean the bike afterwards, so best avoided. But similarly, check your route and make sure you're not going on any horrible busy roads. It could either be just unpleasant, stressful, dangerous, or, as I've done before, you might end up going onto a proper dual carriageway where you can't cycle anyway, so then you have to turn back and find a diversion, which again, less than ideal. If you're wanting to cover long distances, it might be worth trying to bypass some of the busy towns. Obviously, if you want to stop for food and stuff, then you're going to find more in the towns, but just going through them for the sake of it, probably best avoided if you can, because traffic lights and just heavy traffic can easily add a lot of time, stress, and just bother to your ride. Now, there's a lot of tools you can use for your route planning. I quite enjoy this part of long bike rides. I like the planning and getting into the nitty-gritty of it. Some people obviously don't, and that's fine, but it's probably worth taking a bit of time before you head out just to look at your route. So I use Komoot to plan my routes, and you can look at road cycling highlights that people have added, which might be nice roads or nice views, good shops, that kind of thing, and you can kind of select your discipline, so if it's road cycling or touring or mountain biking or whatever, and in theory it should direct you through appropriate roads, although it doesn't always work out, so best to double check. You can also use Strava heat map. That gives you quite a good indication of where a lot of people cycle, stay on the beaten track as it were. And personally, I don't know, this is a bit much, but I quite like to look along my route using Google Maps Street View, just to try and get an eye for road surface. Is it passable? Has the Google Street View camera car been able to get down the road, or is it actually a little muddy footpath, that kind of thing. And I would say as well, still on Google Maps, check that there's shops along your route at sensible distances, maybe every 50 kilometers or so. And this probably applies for events as well as your own rides. You don't want to get caught short without any food or any water. So you can, on Google, you can search for things like convenience store, garage, bakery, whatever floats your boat, pub maybe. And just then, cross-reference that with Komoot or whatever you're planning your routes on to make sure that you're going to be going past these shops at, fairly regular intervals. I think this applies even if you're doing sort of organised structured events with control points as well, like Audaxes, because you never know when you're going to get hungry or get caught short in between. So good to be prepared and just know that there is something there if you need to stop, if you're a bit tired, hungry, thirsty, whatever. Okay, tip number 3 is just eat, eat, eat. Obviously it's common sense to start the day with a big breakfast, but then you want to start snacking like 5 kilometers down the road after you leave. Similarly, obviously stop for lunch, but keep the food coming in even after you carry on again. I think it's so important just to keep the carbs coming in even when you're not hungry, because your body will thank you later on, trust me. Now, it can take some experimenting, but it's really important to work out what works for you, what you can handle without getting an upset stomach, cramps, or worse. Some people, they need solid food, like real food, the whole time they're out. For others, they can just whack a load of table sugar in bottles of water and just sustain themselves on that. Whatever it is, just, I'd say, find something that works for you and stick to it. Having said that, after a certain point, really long rides can just become more of an eating competition. Obviously, some foods are more optimal, as they'd say, than others. But when it gets to that point, just eat whatever you think you can stomach. I personally, as a rule of thumb, try to avoid anything too fatty, because as I understand it, it can slow your digestion and it just makes me a bit sluggish and lethargic. But other than that, just experiment with different things. Work out what works best for you to keep those energy levels up. And this probably ties into my previous point about planning properly, making sure you're going through shops, especially later in the day when you might feel a bit depleted and you need that magic can of Coke or Haribo or whatever just to keep you going. Okay, so that's put a stopper on the route I had planned. Just going to head back the way I came and see where I can get to, I suppose. So another thing I'd say, I know there's probably mixed opinions on it, but I definitely think gels and powders and energy chews have their place. I think, if you can bang a 50 grams carb gel when you're at a low point, it can very easily get you out of a hole, or at least get you, moving a bit further till you can find some real food. Similarly, I quite like to just sip on a bottle with maltodextrin carbs in all day. Doesn't taste of anything, it's not too sweet. It keeps your energy levels topped up without even realizing. I'd also recommend the DIY approach, mixing up your own like gels or drinks at home can save so much money compared to, $1.99 for a bottle of Lucozade each time. But the one thing I'd say is to be careful with your measuring and your ratios. A couple of years ago, on a particularly hot day, I accidentally consumed 180 grams of carbs in an hour because I was really thirsty, so I just kept drinking and drinking and drinking. And to be honest, I did well not to shit myself, so definitely something to keep an eye out for, and just be careful if you are going to go down that route. I think as well there's quite a fine art to eating on the go. Can be a bit awkward, especially at first, but definitely worth practicing, keeping your food in easy to access pockets, or for example, I quite like to bring a Tupperware box that I can put like flapjacks or cakes in, I can whip that out easily, eat what I need, put it back in the pocket without worrying about like too much mess. And this could also help with rule number 1, which is no faffing, because you haven't got to spend as much time stopping to get food out your bag to then put it back in. You can just eat while you're still making progress. Okay, tip number 4 is embrace the ups and downs. On any long ride, you're inevitably going to have these ups and downs, mentally and physically. I think it's so important to, when things are going great, just bear in mind that it's not going to last forever. And probably more importantly, when you're feeling rough, it is going to get better. Now, obviously, you can do things like making sure you're eating enough, you're rested enough, you're not pushing yourself too hard. But I think what's probably more important is how you react when you do feel like you're in the hole a bit. Try to remind yourself that these phases are temporary and they do come and go in waves. It's something that I struggle with, and probably a lot of people struggle with just in everyday life, but maybe on the bike these things are magnified. If you don't feel great, it's so easy to ruminate on it and go in sort of a downward spiral, and before you know it, you're so much worse off than you were originally. It can be the hardest thing in the world to do, especially when you do feel like you're in the hole, but just trying to stay objective and mindful that it's not going to last forever. And then more often than not, before you know it, you're suddenly feeling better again. It's definitely something that happens more towards the end of long rides for me, when the physical tiredness is building up. But if you're aware of it, at least you can try and react in a more positive way and get through it.
Give me this.
My fifth and final tip for today is don't neglect your body. Your body takes a battering on long rides regardless of how intensely you're pushing, and you only get one, so pay attention to it. So firstly, I'd say pay attention to your bike fit. Any issues might not come out until you're like 6 hours into a long ride, something like that, but they can either ruin the experience or give you a long-term injury. So I developed excruciating knee pain about 200 kilometers into a 350k ride. It's been about 9 months, and it still gives me niggles now, to be honest, even with physio, strengthening exercises, that kind of thing. And it's annoying to think that could have been avoided if I just paid a bit of attention to my bike fit beforehand. Other than injury prevention, it can make your riding more comfortable as well, which is obviously really important on the long rides. So for example, after I had a bike fit, my weight was more evenly distributed across all my contact points. So I was having a bit of like hand and wrist pain towards the end beforehand, but now I don't get that at all. My shoulders feel a lot better. I used to get a bit of a sore neck and shoulders, don't get any of that now. And lastly, it can make you more efficient as well, which again, if you're not particularly performance focused, then it might not matter too much, but if that could shave off half an hour off of an all-day ride, then I'd say go for it. The other side of the coin is to not neglect your stretching and mobility work. So it could be dynamic stretching at home, or using a foam roller, a cricket ball to target the deep muscles, anything like that. I'd say it's especially important if you're training regularly, just to, 10 minutes at the end of the ride or something, just to try and help the muscles relax a bit. It can do wonders for how stiff you feel, sort of from day to day. And maybe something a bit less common in the cycling community, but something I've always been a fan of, because I used to play rugby, is working on your strength work in the gym. It could be just core exercises, or compound lifts like squats and deadlifts that really target sort of your whole body. Now these can help your power output, which again has some benefits, but more importantly just help to sort of keep you stable, keep you comfortable, ward off those niggles and prevent any injuries over the long term. Okay, that's the end of the video. I hope maybe you've learned something. If you have enjoyed it, then I'd really appreciate if you click like on the video and considered subscribing to the channel. Got some good plans for the rest of winter and going into next year. So yeah, keep an eye out for more ultra endurance, Audax, Randonneuring videos, and I'll see you next time.